All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome to day 4 of Dreamforce to You. We are so excited you are joining us in the admin room. I want to introduce you to Mari Greenberg, a senior applications instructor at Salesforce, who will be speaking on creating and customizing reports. We also have Kevin Corcoran in the room, one of our principal instructors at Salesforce, who will be online answering any product-specific questions in the Q&A chat. With that, take it away, Mari.
I'm off mute now and good to go. You all can hear me. Awesome. Thanks, Mariah. Glad to have all of you here. It looks like we have about 100 people on the line, maybe a few more. I know Dreamforce looks a little bit different, but so glad you all could join us, even if it's from the comfort of your own homes, like we are too. Welcome to our session today. You have myself, again, my name is Mari Greenberg, and you have Kevin as well manning our chat. So today's session is all about creating and customizing reports, and our goal is to really tackle a couple of those key features that lay the foundation for creating new reports, report types, and report formats. So we'll spend a little bit of time here in our slide deck, and then we'll hop into the platform, play around, demo some stuff. So we get to the fun stuff here soon. One little housekeeping thing before we do get started, our forward-looking statement. So just remember that all of your purchasing decisions should be based on products and services as they currently exist, not what may or may not be upcoming. So with that, our key terms today here, report types and report formats. When we talk about report types, I want you to think about really the content of your report and really the realm of possibility for your report as well. So what are report types? Report types are really the combinations of objects. So you may have a couple, you may have just one, and they're fields, both standard and custom fields that you see as that foundation or starting point when you create a custom report. So when you create a report from scratch, you have to start somewhere, and that report type is that somewhere. That report type determines what fields are available when you start creating that report, determines what filters are available in addition to some of the default values you see that pull in. Those are based on what's called the primary object, and you will see those, well, really the primary object could be just one object or multiple, which we'll get there. And that report type also determines the default columns. So what's going to initially populate your report grid when you start building. So the report type, again, determines all of these things. Now we have a couple types of report types. We have standard report types and custom report types. So let's talk about those first. And again, we'll go in and we will demo here in just a little bit. So with standard report types, think about when you're in the reports tab in Salesforce, you click on new report, and that next screen that pops up is going to show you your selections of report types. Out of the box, we have those standard report types, and these reflect really the most common relationships among objects. So building reports from based on both standard and custom objects and those relationships they have with other objects. When you create new fields in Salesforce, which undoubtedly you will do as you tailor your org to your company's needs, those new custom fields are automatically added to these standard report types. Now, one of the biggest pieces to standard report types is really the relationship that they reflect. So take a look at that Venn diagram here on the right. So when we are working with standard report types, we are reflecting what's called inner join reports, or really looking at where those two objects overlap in your Venn diagram. So for example, we look at opportunities with products. We are looking at which opportunity records also have products associated. We're capturing that realm of data, nothing else. Okay, so just like you see here, when we choose that report type, this is what we are going to return in our records. But what if this does not suit what we need? What if I want to pull more than just the opportunities with products? What if I want to pull opportunities with or without products? So I want to get this whole left circle, the rest of my opportunities records into this report too. In that case, I need a custom report type. Okay, so with a custom report type, I can get a little more creative with really what do I want to see in my report. So I can create my framework for that report. And that's really the whole point of custom report types. You are going to set that foundation from which you work to create a report. So you can dictate the primary, secondary, maybe even a tertiary object. You can dictate how are these objects related to one another. Do they have that with relationship? Do they have that with or without relationship? So we're looking at inner joins, outer joins. What data do you want to bring in? So you can select combinations really of up to 4 related objects that aren't available within your standard report types and create those other relationships among those objects. Now, not only do custom report types allow you to dictate those object relationships, but you can take it a step further and dictate what fields are going to be available in your report builder. So report builder is kind of like edit mode. I kind of use those interchangeably, but report builder is really the Salesforce term. And so you can dictate what fields are going to populate as options in your realm of possibilities. What are they named? So you can change your labels. You can decide how they're grouped or sectioned together in report builder. So you do have a lot of freedom to really design this foundation for a report you're going to build from this report type. So there are really a few key characteristics to differentiate standard report types and custom report types. So I know this slide is very simple, but it does call out just when you would need a custom report type. So when you need to make your own versus when will my standard report types suit my needs. So remember that my standard report types, those ready-made options, reflect those common object relationships. You're going to look at inner joins. So think back to that Venn diagram. When am I capturing the overlap between those two objects? And you'll automatically include all of these standard and custom fields for each of those objects in the report builder. But if those don't work for you, you have the option to create a custom report type. And those custom report types are created in setup. So kind of the one key reports feature that an admin would work with in setup takes you through a whole wizard to build out the report type. I think it's super fun. It's super easy. There is also a Trailhead Live session that I actually led on building custom report types. So feel free to check that out. So with custom report types, you set that standard for which objects you want to work with. What is that relationship among those objects? Is it a with or without report? Is it an inner join? Is it an outer join? How do you want those fields viewable in Report Builder? So how should it be organized? How should they be sectioned? What fields should be available? Should it be everything or just certain fields? So with custom report types, you really get to dictate what's available to work with. Okay, so with report types, again, think about the content in your report. The other key term we talked about is the report format. With report formats, we're thinking about the display or presentation of the data. So report type, think really the data itself. What do I want to have to work with to pull in? Report format, how do I want to look at it? How do we want to display that information? We have 4 report formats. We have a tabular format, summary, matrix. On the next slide, you'll see a joined report. Hopefully we'll have time to take a look at all 4 of these. A tabular report is your most simplistic report. So a tabular, think it's a list, really 1 record per row. Okay, most simplistic you'll get. Whenever you export a report as really plain text or details only, it will always come out as a tabular report. A summary report is where we start to add groupings. So we're going to work with opportunities as we demo here in a moment. And an example of a summary report, let's say I want to group my opportunities by sales rep. I want to see what does each person have in the pipeline. I would add a grouping at the row level. So a summary report has at least 1 grouping at the row level. It can have up to 3 groupings in total. Okay, what if I want opportunities by rep, but then I also want to dig in deeper and see opportunities by rep and stage? You could have multiple levels of groupings. A matrix report, think pivot table. So a matrix report, you have at least one grouping at the row level, at least one grouping at the column level. So let's think about that opportunities by rep. Let's say I only have that one grouping. Maybe I want to put a stage grouping across the columns, or maybe I want to look at the close month. So seeing when are all these opportunities that each individual owns, what month are they due to close, and also group by that close month. Okay, so a matrix has at least one grouping at the row level, at least one grouping at the column level, up to 4 groupings in total. So tabular summary matrix. Our last report format is called a joined report. Joined reports are pretty fun, and they're great when you are looking to do a comparative analysis. So I'll give you an example of an account scorecard. Let's say I want to compare activities, opportunities, and cases across accounts. All of those records would really be joined by account ID, right? Or we could look at account name as a grouping across all what we call blocks. So joined reports are like a bunch of little mini reports within a bigger report. Those mini reports are what we call blocks. And you can have up to 5 blocks in a joined report. So that account scorecard was one example I gave you as to when you could use a joined report. Now, all of these formats, what you're going to choose is really going to be based on the question that was posed. So how am I going to most easily, or your shareholder most easily, digest the information they're requesting? So that is one key question you should be asking yourself before you go about creating a report. And lastly, on this slide, before we hop in and play around here in the platform, what are some of the other questions you should be asking before you go in and create your report? You want to be efficient. You want to ask those questions of your requester. Even if it means being a pest over email, just do it. It'll save you lots of time. So thinking about what objects, what data do you want to report on? Remember, that translates to what report type am I going to use? Maybe even what columns. Columns are my fields. Whose records do I want to see? What time frame will really dictate the scope of my report. Groupings go hand in hand with the format. What field or fields do I want to group by? Does it make sense for a summary report with multiple groupings or matrix report? Do I want to see subtotals or grand totals? Filters, how do I want to limit my information? And lastly, visuals. Do I want to have a report chart? Do I want to introduce some conditional formatting? Those are my favorite. So all of these things we want to ask ourselves before we create a new report. So with that, let's go ahead. We're going to hop in. I'm going to change my screen over here. Go ahead and share my screen with you. And we'll hop into Salesforce. All right. So here we are in Salesforce. I am just in one of our training orgs here. And I'm going to hop into my reports tab. All right. So once in my reports tab, here's my new report button. So we're going to start here. When I click on new report, this is where we first encounter those report types. Okay. And in this particular org, I have not created any custom report types. So the options in this screen reflect standard report types. Remember, what is my realm of possibility for my report? So you'll see categories over on the left-hand side, largely aligned with objects. But for example, my customer support reports, cases is where you'll find those reports. Administrative reports you can find, again, a lot based on usage. I'm going to stick in the opportunities category here. We're going to work off of just the plain old opportunities report type. So just one object as my primary object, but take a look at some of my other options. Opportunities with products, opportunities with partners, opportunities with competitors. They're all with when I have more than one object, right? So think about those inner joins. If I wanted opportunities with or without competitors, I need to create a custom report type. So that's when I'd hop into setup to do that. Okay, so right now with those with reports, I'm only capturing that overlap of my two circles in my Venn diagram. But so we can demo a bunch of those different formats that I talked about earlier. We're going to just work with our opportunities report type. So when I click continue, you will see here, again, what does my report type dictate? I gotta have a starting point, and that's exactly what my report type does. So kind of working my way from left to right here, if I expand my field section, here are all the potential fields based on the report type I selected that I could bring into my report. Now remember, opportunity has a relationship with account and with contact, so you see some account fields. You'll see some contact fields. You see standard and custom fields here. Okay, so here are some of the custom fields built out. Those were automatically added to my standard report type. Now, if I hide that guy, let's take a look here at my outline tab. And I do a lot of my report manipulation here in the outline tab. There's no right or wrong way to do things to build your report. You'll just get it as you become more familiar and more comfortable. So my columns, again, top down, really reflects left to right in my grid. I can reorder, I can remove, I could add fields here. So I'm actually going to remove a couple fields. Now notice I can work with this little simple X to remove the field. Each column header has a drop down, whether it's simply removing the field, moving it, sorting. You can also drag and drop within the actual grid itself. You'll see those blue lines populate. I'm going to get rid of a few fields we don't need. So I'm just simply going to remove them. It's a little bit slow on my side, I know. Remove them from my columns here. And notice, yes, I have also set this toggle, update preview automatically. I love to see my changes happen as I make them in my grid. So I love to make sure that I have toggled that on. And I'm gonna get rid of a couple of other fields here that we don't need just as we demo, unless it takes too long. So hopefully we'll get rid of these few. And as I mentioned, I love to work with the fields here in my column section, whether it's adding, removing, reordering, even with groupings. I like to drag and drop in this part of the screen, but there are multiple ways to do that. So no right or wrong. All right, let's leave it at this for right now. If I wanted to add a field, what if I wanted to add stage duration? So we have stage, again, reflecting the sales stage. Maybe I add stage duration, which is the number of days that this opportunity has been in the given stage. So knowing that stage duration and stage go hand in hand, remember when I add this field, it's dropped to the very bottom. So it's the far right of my report after leads or after type. I'm going to actually just move stage duration adjacent to stage. And I'm just going to drag and drop here. You could also, again, use the down arrow next to my column header in the grid to do that same thing. Again, it is a little bit delayed on my side, but notice how stage duration is now next to stage. So, made a couple of changes here. If I run this report, and I know I haven't named it, but let's just run it. What you are looking at here is a tabular report. One record per row. There are 63 records here. I may make a couple of other changes with my filters to see how that changes things. This is a tabular report. No groupings, simple list. Okay. Now I'm going to make a couple of filter changes. So I'm going to go back in and edit this same report. My filters. So remember, my report type dictates my fields, my default fields, what populates initially, as well as what filters, and the initial scope of my report. Take a look at my close date. So right now I'm looking at all the opportunities, open and closed, with a close date in the current quarter. I'm going to change that. And I'm going to say I don't care when the close date is. So I'm going to set my range to all time. However, I want to look at just open opportunities. So just opportunities in the pipeline. So I'm going to change my opportunity status from any to open. So I'm looking at all of my open opportunities no matter when they're going to close. Okay, so my numbers may have changed slightly. Either way, when I run this report, still looking at a tabular format. Not sure if that's really what I want, right? It's a lot to look at, 65 opportunities. Maybe I want to look at it by rep. And maybe I want to see for each of those reps, how much are their open opportunities worth? So that tells me something about subtotals, right? Summaries for each rep. So I'm going to go back in and edit this report. And let's kind of transform it and add a grouping. Couple ways I could add that grouping. So when I add, I'm going to group by opportunity owner, my sales rep. I could do that a couple of ways. Again, I could use my down arrow here, and I could group rows by this field. Notice how I don't have the option to group columns. I cannot create a matrix report until after I at least have a grouping by row. So I could choose this option here, or I could drag and drop opportunity owner up to group rows. And notice it's a little sensitive. You have to drop it when it has that light blue highlighting. Now, cool little feature here of Lightning reports. If you haven't worked in Lightning or maybe spent time in Classic, in Lightning, my report just automatically changed to accommodate my moving of opportunity owner as a row grouping. In the old days, or with Classic, you would have to actually dictate the format and choose summary or matrix, and then move your fields or your groupings appropriately. This does it for you. Notice when I made that change, stage duration actually added a subtotal. I'm going to get rid of that. I want to see a subtotal for amount. So I'm going to actually get rid of this stage duration. It's a funky little thing here in this training org that automatically was subtotaled. But I'm going to add a subtotal for amount. So a couple of ways you can do this. I can find under my amount dropdown, I can summarize by sum. I could also find my field here. So everything that's prefaced with a pound sign just denotes a calculated field or numeric field. I could sum here. Either way, like I said, it's totally what you are comfortable with. There's no right or wrong. But I just summed stage duration again. So let me get rid of that. Pick the wrong field here. Let's grab amount then, and I will add that sum back in just so our report is then more meaningful. And again, I know there's a little bit of a delay on my side here. There we go. Let me go ahead and sum my amount column. And then I'm going to run this report. We have created a very simple summary formatted report now. I'm now looking at opportunities by rep. So let's take a look. On the left-hand side, here's my row grouping by opportunity owner. And I have summed, or I now have a subtotal at the amount for each person. Now, still a lot to kind of look at, right? In that I have individual opportunity information for each individual who owns that opportunity. What if I only care though about these subtotals or the number of opportunities each person has and the value they're worth? At the bottom of my screen, I can work with these toggles to kind of change my view of this report. Again, still a summary format. We haven't gotten to matrix yet. I'm going to toggle off detail rows and take a look at what happens. Now I see only each individual, again, one grouping in my report, but the amount, so the value of open opportunities that this person owns, and the record count reflects how many opportunities. So for example, Anna Bresson owns 6 opportunities worth a little over 1.5 million. This is all just fake data in a little training work. Same thing, Matt Wilson, Phil Smith is crushing it. He has 20 opportunities with over $20 million. David Hudson not doing too bad either. So you can use these toggles at the bottom of your screen to still whittle down your report to just the information you want to see. Again, how is it going to be most easily digested by your requesters, your shareholders, so they can take away some really actionable insights? So this is a summary formatted report. Let's take this one step further to create a matrix report. So remember, a summary report has at least one grouping at the row level. I could add another grouping at the row level here. What if I wanted to break down individuals, what they own, by stage? I could do that too. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and add that stage grouping at the column level, thus creating that matrix format. So let's see what happens. Again, a couple of ways I could do this. I could just simply drag and drop stage to my group columns, or now that I have at least one grouping at the row level, I have the option to group columns by this field. So what if I select it here? And you'll see on the left-hand side in my outline that that grouping will also be reflected. Okay, so see how that also moved here to my group columns. Now, my biggest personal pet peeve here is there is a lot to look at on the screen. One of the first things I do when I'm going to work with a matrix is I always toggle off the detail rows. So if you see that at the bottom, I'm going to actually toggle this guy off and kind of clean up my screen. It's a little distracting looking at the opportunity details below, but my actual matrix at the top. So I really just want to focus on my matrix because at the end of the day, that's why I create a matrix report. I want to see those aggregations of data. So now what I'm looking at is going my rows or looking down here. I have groupings, my row grouping by opportunity owner, so by sales rep. Going across my columns, I am grouped by stage. So where am I at in the sales process? So we looked at Phil and David had quite a bit of money, quite a bit of sales to close, right? But where are we in the process? Are they all in prospecting, kind of in the infancy of selling, or are we really close to the end of closing that deal? So if I run this report, let's just take a look at kind of the more published version here. Here's what we see. And again, what if this is too distracting still? What if I don't care about the number of opportunities? So see how the first number in each cell here represents my value. The second number represents a record count. If I want to toggle off that record count, you have that row counts toggle to work with here. So now take a look at what I've done. For each individual, again, my row grouping, how does the distribution look across stages in the selling process? So if we pick on, again, our two top sellers here, Phil and David, Phil with over 20 million, almost 21 million, but look at where a lot of those dollars lie, kind of in the earlier stages of selling, right? We want to get those moving along, and we need to close this almost $3 million that's in the latter stages of selling. So this, again, how do I want to look at my data? Will really tell you, what do we want to group by? Maybe it's not stage, maybe it's close date. Are we due to have a busy January versus a February or March? Looking at close month. So it's another way we could take a look at this information. Okay, so I use these toggles as well at the bottom. If I toggled on detail rows, I can still see the individual records and their close dates, lead source, type, those other fields in my report, I can still see that. I just toggle them off to only focus on the totals that I wanted to look at. Okay, so this is a matrix report. I have one grouping at the row, one at the column. So remember, tabular, simple list. Summary, at least one grouping at the row level. Matrix, at least one grouping at the row, one at the column. Now, the last report format we looked at was a joined report. A little bit different as to how we get there. And how we get there, take a look at the top left of my screen. I know I haven't named my report yet, but where my title would have been, right above it, I have this little drop down. And this is where I can choose the joined report format. So if I choose joined report, and I'm not going to fully build out this report, but I just want to show you how these blocks work. This report type, that opportunities, is still my first building block. Remember, I can have up to 5 blocks in a joined report. Okay, so notice, take a look at how my outline tab looks. My groupings are maintained. I could still get rid of those here if you just want to see without any groupings. This is how my joined report is first going to start. I have one block for opportunities. So it's like my own little mini report for opportunities. I could add a block for cases. So maybe I want to add a block, and now I get to choose another report type. So a report type feeds each block in a joined report. So let's say I want to add a simple cases and take a look at some common fields we call out for you and where they come from. So if I add a second block, this is going to be my cases block 1. And we'll see that as its own little chunk here below opportunities. Now, each of these blocks act as reports. So I could filter, I'm not going to, but just want to show you, I could filter opportunities separately from cases. The last piece too, what's the point of a joined report? Well, if we add a group, what if we don't want to group by account name? So that across the board, across my blocks, I am grouping by account. And I can see respective opportunities and cases for that grouping. Okay, so notice how these blocks are in different colors. And I'll just run this one real quick before we come back to our slides. So you see, you could have up to 5 different quote colors to represent your blocks, but take a look at how this looks. Okay, so I'm moving across my blocks, but my groupings are static here by account name. So this is that joined report. Again, up to 5 blocks, mini little reports in a joined report are possible. So with that, we've really covered report types. Again, think content. What is that realm of possibility for my report? Report formats, how do I want to look at it? How do I want to display or present that information? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here, and we'll come back to our slides. So let me come back here. And the last thing I want to do before we open up for questions, just want to say thank you all again so much for your time today. I know it looks a little different than years past. It's a bummer not to be with all of you in person, but this will have to do. We are almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but thank you guys so much for your time today. And please, we'll open it up to some questions. So I'll hop into the chat. I know Kevin is probably busy in the chat, but let me open it up to questions for the last couple of minutes.
So great, Mari. There are a couple of few questions that have come through that I've saved for us. And I'm going to start with the most recent of the questions, working my way backwards a little bit. The question that came up from Sarah M. was a question that just popped up.
Okay.
And she had asked, those were the cases for the accounts in the opportunity report?
So remember, when we created that joined report, we had both a block for cases and a block for opportunities, we grouped by accounts. So that grouping is going to dictate, again, we will see in that report for those accounts what cases and what opportunities, but we haven't actually filtered. So we could also filter as well.
Fantastic.
And I see, Kevin, to another question, I'm just in the chat as well. Jody just asked, what would you use a bucket column for? That's a great question. Now, you could use buckets to basically create larger verticals. So for example, what if I wanted to bucket industries into more broader categorizations? Or I wanted to bucket opportunities into small, medium, and large based on amounts. So a bucket column allows you to create broader categorizations. There was a great Trailhead Live session I actually did in the last couple of months on extending some of this reporting functionality, including exception reports, bucket fields. So it's a great one to take a look at, Jody.
I have another that came up earlier from Richard, and it's more of a general question about matrix. And he had mentioned that in one of his classes, someone asked if matrix is basically the same as an Excel table. And if not, what are the differences?
So it is very similar to an Excel table. Again, when you add that grouping by a row and a column, you're creating that matrix, and really like a pivot, especially it'll look a lot like a pivot table if you are utilizing subtotals and grand totals as well. At the end of the day, though, it is all really personal preference. There is nothing preventing you from exporting data you pull in Salesforce, and if you are an Excel whiz, go for it. You can still pivot it in Excel, but just know that we pretty much offer, maybe not all, but the majority of functionality still in that matrix report. And I don't know, Kevin, if you have anything else to add to that.
I would think the only other limitation is within Salesforce, the limiting of the groupings is what you're talking about. And that's where a pivot table is going to give you a much more broad expanse. Another question that came up for us, Mari, is a question that came up earlier, and I answered it privately, but I think it's a great question for all of us. And the question is, if I wanted to create a column within the report that's not already a standard or custom field, but it calculates on the report based off other fields, can I do that? How would I do that?
That is a great question. So we have summary formula fields. We actually have row level fields. And Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if those row level fields are GA or still in beta. But with custom summary formula fields, I'll give you one example. And that's, what if we wanted to look at calculating a win rate for your sales reps, like a batting average? How well are they closing and winning their deals versus closing and losing their deals? That's not a field that exists in Salesforce, and it's based on that rep's book of business, right? I would create what's called a summary formula field to calculate that percentage at the owner level, thus the summary level. So that is possible. One example, I gave you the row level formula. What if I wanted to calculate how long it took to close an opportunity? So basically looking at the close date minus the create date or open date to see how long it was in existence. That would be a row level formula, because that would exist for every record in that report.
Fantastic. Well, Jennifer asked while you were mentioning that, the question is there a way to create a report joining reports from different objects?
So think about what we did with the joined report. That was probably one of the best ways we could reflect, again, groupings with various objects. So if you think about, I could have brought in activities in addition to opportunities and cases, but think about the relationships among objects, whether you can simply create maybe a custom report type, if that is going to be more frequently used, or if you can satisfy that request with a joined report, when there is a joining or unifying identifier among those objects. And I don't know, Kevin, if you have anything else to add to that.
I don't, but I think I have at least one more question for us. And that question comes from Brian. And Brian asked, what differentiates the cross filter from a normal filter?
Great question. I love cross filters, and I will make one more plug for, we did do a nice Trailhead Live session actually using cross filters and building a report based on cross filters. So with cross filters, you can actually look at child objects, so related objects, and you could essentially create, without having to create a custom report type, you could weed out, so you could include or not include certain records in your report based on those child objects. I don't know if that was the best way to explain that, or Kevin, if you have any other context for it. It's much easier to demo.
I do have a follow-up to it.
Sure.
And the question came from Wendy, and the question is, can I use a cross filter in a joined report?
So cross filter in a joined report, I'd probably actually have to go back in and take a look at my joined report. It would probably depend on which, we'd have to look at, again, one of those blocks. We can't use them a cross block. So just remember that that block is going to be individual, but I'd probably have to go in and look. So I don't know, Kevin, if you may have any other.
No, that was a perfect answer in that regard, because I understand that you can, within each block, to use and apply the cross filter, but it does not at this juncture go across all blocks.
Awesome.
So I know that we're cutting it a little bit close potentially on our timing, and other folks interested in moving forward. I do know that other questions are coming in, and we're happy to answer them. For instance, when it comes to what are the same and main key points that during this session you would like to suggest that we focus on when it comes to our certification?
I think that's an awesome question. I just saw that come in as well. I would say that's important for CERT to understand really the implications of those formats and the report type. So what is a report type determining? What's the difference between standard and custom? Why would I need a custom report? So think about the relationships between objects and really what you want to reflect in a report. I think with the report formats, understand if I'm looking to present or display, think about my groupings. Why would I need, or when I have multiple groupings presented to me, think about in the question, am I looking at opportunities by rep and close month, or simply by rep, or I want to group by stage? What's going to be the best way to present that data when I know I have a factor to consider in how I present that information? So again, the implications of both those report types and report formats.
Fantastic. That, I think, summarizes the majority of questions, and otherwise we had answered them one off for everybody. Go ahead and turn it back to you. For questions that have posted, know that I am going to be going back in and making sure I answer them to you directly. So if you've logged in those sessions, you heard your answer, or I'll be following up. I would certainly say, in closing up with Mari's last comment as far as best practices, certainly if you go to Trailhead and you get on and go to the certifications themselves and look up the certifications, there's an exam guide that is listed for each and every one. Highly recommend opening up and looking at the details inside the analytics section. You'll see bullet points that emphasize the pieces that Mari covered for us today. For instance, describe the options available when creating or customizing a report, specifically, now that you've had this session, for the different report types. What are the nuances between a report type and a report format, which is what this session really emphasized and demonstrated. So thank you very much, Mari.
So pass it back over to Mariah. One last reminder, again, we track our success, your success. Let us know how we did with that survey if you don't mind taking a couple minutes to fill that out. And as Mariah just posted, take a look at some of the other sessions, some concurrent that we're running. We're running this one for the next couple of hours as well. But Mariah, I'll turn it over to you.